Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. This is your host, Teri Wellbrock, and just wanted to take a second to thank you for being here and a part of this healing space, for liking, sharing, commenting on videos, and yes, just helping this show continue to grow. Had our best month ever in October. So excited about that. Almost doubled September's downloads, which is just incredible. And the show's been on the air for over 4 years and 3 months. Started in July of 2017. And last month's downloads accounted for over 11% of total downloads over all of that time. So it just absolutely blossomed. And I have you to thank for it. So many people saying, hey, I was talking about the Healing Place podcast and told this friend to listen in, or hey, I have somebody who's experiencing some severe grief, and so yes, can you tell me what show they need to listen to? So it's just been wonderful, and I just wanted to say thank you. Again, a reminder to go to academy.teriwellbrock.com. Tell folks I have online courses and coaching available. Thanks. Now for the show. Welcome, everybody, to the Healing Place podcast. I'm your host, Teri Wellbrock, and I am just so very thrilled to have with me today Amy Erickson. And she is a filmmaker, director, trauma survivor, and social impact artist and communicator. And oh my gosh, she's here to talk about her film release and so much more. So welcome, Amy.
Hi, Teri. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We've had a great chat. We had a little intro chat a couple weeks ago, and it was just such a beautiful, I felt that soul sister connection right away. And yeah, and every time we chat, I just feel like we connect a little bit more on something and get each other. So
Right. Me too. Me too. I feel like I need to jump on a plane and come down there and hug you.
oh, thanks. Thank you so much. I know you're just such a beautiful soul, and I feel blessed that our paths have crossed. So
Likewise.
awesome. So talk to people about what you're doing in the world.
I have just finished, in 2020, I finished the documentary Visceral, which is about people who have been living with the impact of post-traumatic stress in their lives. And it's basically a story of four individuals that are similar to me and my story. And it's about their journeys from moving from being stuck, living with rage and isolation and suicidal thoughts, to moving forward in their lives after they begin performing on stage, or when they continue performing on stage. And they're able to really heal relationships and find a path forward, and they want to live again. And that's exactly where I was when I started making the film.
Yes, well, I've seen it, and man, did it have an impact on me. I messaged you afterwards and just said, I think I wrote a review for you as well, and just I cried through the whole thing, but in such a beautiful, powerful, soul-touching way. I mean, it really, really touched me on a deep level. Yeah, it's very powerful, but so filled with hope and inspiration. That's the beautiful part. Yes, you follow these people and they share their story and their struggles, but it's the hope part that, oh, just beautiful.
Oh man, I get the chills when I hear that because that's, like I said, it was just my story, and that is my message with the film is there is hope. We don't have to live these lives of isolation, which has really been on my mind a lot lately, or disconnection from family or loved ones, or in constant distress. I talk about this film being about people in post-traumatic stress, but really what it is post-traumatic distress. And it's about the shame that we carry about our inability to not be well, or not find a way to overcome trauma. And when we disconnect and we don't want to tell people what's really going on, it gets it's sort of like the dark hole that just surrounds us and we carry it with us everywhere. So yeah.
Oh, gosh, have I lived that? And I'm telling you, when I finally started sharing my truths in my trauma in my 40s and putting it out on social media, and it just once it started flowing, it was just like blah, like I was just putting it out there, and the majority of people were just so accepting and compassionate about it. And even many of them reached out to me privately and said, oh my gosh, me too. I've never told anybody, blah, blah, blah. And how many trauma survivors never told anybody. But there were those select few who were like, la, 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 I don't want to hear it. Don't talk about it. We put our blinders on. We pretend that life is amazing and we don't want to know about all that. Yeah.
Yes, and that's what keeps us shut down. So in the sense of we don't want to share with people because we're already vulnerable and we are already in so much pain, and living with, in my case, the early childhood attachment wound was just so profound. And so we don't want to tell people that because, it's another sort of label of there's something wrong with me. But um, I find that, when we are able to connect with people and tell our story, that's a first step. And then there's also the piece of how do we move it? How do we use what we know is happening in our body to move it out? Um, so, you know, I've always wanted to tell my story, and I never knew what it was until I was in my early 50s. And that's when I started to make the film.
Yeah. Do you want to share any part of your personal story of triumph?
Sure, sure. Well, by the time I reached 49, I was um, just, I had decided I did not want to numb my feelings anymore. The first half of my life in my 20s and 30s, I was numbing it and self-medicating with drugs and alcohol. And then later in my second half, it was antidepressants that kept everything tapped down, so this history that I had with early childhood insecure attachment was playing out in my life in every way, shape, or form. And my body was crying out for me to listen, but I didn't. And I used the drugs and alcohol to self-soothe. And then I used antidepressants to keep things in check. So I could try to have relationships with people without that constant pull of I need you to give me more. I need more secure attachment. I didn't even know what those things were actually. And it wasn't until I learned about ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences, in my early 50s that I went, oh, that's what's going on. But at the same time, I was a grant writer and I was working with an organization that places foster children in new families. And I was learning about attachment and attachment theory and attachment disorder. And it was like all of a sudden the lights went on in my head and I realized, I think this is me. It's not about the labels that all the therapists over the years were trying to put on me of, bipolar or what, any of those
Right.
diagnoses, they didn't quite fit because I I knew there was something very primary wrong. And it was basically as I was in a child, infant, not having those attachment bonding needs met by my mother. And, when you're an infant, you don't have the ability to make sense of your world and put words on it. All you know is that if your mother, and, in this case, it was my mother, isn't able to give you look at you when she's nursing or feeding you, speak to you in, gentle, cooing, calming, um, words and a voice, and be playful and make you feel safe and calm. Your nervous system as a baby, that's what your body learns, and your brain will always be on high alarm or high alert for those needs not ever being properly met. And so I spent my entire adult life trying to form attachments in a way that I felt safe, and I really never did. And I used all the tools to self-soothe over the years, and it's for me right now, when I look at what's going on in the world around post-traumatic distress and trauma, I really feel that that is where so many people's primary wounds are. And I don't talk about that in this documentary because for me, it's part two. The documentary is like, one day I stepped on stage at age 40, and it was the only time I could remember feeling joy in my life.
Wow.
And yeah, and I'm going to lose it here, I think, because um, I had so much inside of me that I needed to express that was not acceptable. And these were emotions that, were in my body that apparently when I was a child had wanted to express too, and was always shamed into, don't talk. We don't want to hear from you. But more than anything, it's here I was, this little child crying out for love and support from my mother. And she was cold and dismissive and actually would turn her back on me and walk away. And that kind of pain when you're a baby, you don't know to make sense of that. You don't know what to say. You don't have words for it. So you just internalize it.
Yeah, so powerful. I'm really glad you're touching upon the subject because we just haven't talked about it before. And it is such a powerful. My mom was very distant because of her addictions and her alcohol and drug abuse. However, I had a grandmother that lived in our house who was, I mean, my mom, now that my mom is sober and doing wonderfully, she'll say, your second mommy, Grandma Kitty. And so I had that almost like that replacement mom who was incredibly attentive and affectionate. But yeah, I just, as you speak and talk about these things, there's a little parts of me, probably not as profound, but, and I love that you touched upon the impact of that, even from infancy, and how it impacts our brains, the wiring, the chemicals, and so much. And until we address that, we aren't going to be able to create those new pathways, that brain plasticity changes.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that because in terms of aha moments during those times after I finally got back on stage and then in my early 50s, um, all of my relationships were very troubled and dysfunctional until I met my current husband. Not to say it's perfect, but we worked through together. In fact, I have my favorite book, which is by Sue Johnson, Hold Me Tight. Here we go. We worked through things together. We went to therapy because his daughter did not care for me. So
Oh,
that was so difficult. But the therapist asked about my child upbringing and immediately said, no wonder you are depressed or having outbursts of rage. And we went through what happened when I was raised by my mother. And she said, you can heal your brain. There is such a thing as neuroplasticity. Well, I didn't know that because all the research I had done on attachment disorder was kind of pointing toward your brain is in a fixed structure. Thanks to what we have available in terms of imaging of the brain, we know that's not true. And so I found my way to Dr. Dan Siegel and the mindful brain. And it changed my life because he started talking about attachment and attunement and regulation and interpersonal neurobiology. All these things were like,
yes.
wow, the research geek in me was off and running. And so I had to look at that in my life and started learning more about, John Bowlby's work and on attachment theory, and also what we know about toxic stress in the brain from the research around adverse childhood experiences. And so I had quite a few ACEs going on too. I had two parents who both had post-traumatic stress from their upbringing, plus a father who was a veteran. And so these were people who did everything they could, my parents, to give us a stable life. We always looked good, which was kind of my, I don't know what you'd call that. It's sort of the mask I wore was, I'm going to look really good so you won't think there's anything wrong with me. And my mother was really promoted that. So, I just like to point out that, they didn't, my mother did suffer from depression and rage, and she was physically, she did harm me physically.
Oh,
And so that is something I also carried forward in my life. The beauty of my childhood, though, is my father, and he was he was that one person who I bonded with and had that co-regulation with him. He was my calming person. But unfortunately, he was not emotionally equipped to handle what became in my adolescent years, the the impact or the output of the trauma in my body, which was, me abusing drugs, me trying to commit suicide, my sister having mental health issues. And so on the surface, we looked great, but we were a mess. And um, I want to, before I forget to mention, I want to talk about Dr. Gabor Mate's film, The Wisdom of Trauma. And it's going to air again next week, which I don't know when this will air, but the film really points out why we are living in a time in our world where there are so many people suffering from anxiety. And he talks about early childhood attachment. He describes what the body does and what the nervous system does. So our nervous systems are the piece of us that we just kind of ignore as we go through our days, but we are constantly taking in the external world, our experiences. Those experiences live in our body for our entire lives. They change our DNA. And if we don't look back at why we have this anxiety, what attachment needs did we not have met when we were very young, I think our anxiety problems are not going to go away especially for young people, because there was a time when parents were taught, don't pick your child up when they're crying.
oh, right. Yeah.
So I've just said a lot there, but
Yeah. No, and I'm enthralled by it all because I relate to it, and I'm a research geek as well, and I've read all that. And you sent me the link, I think, for the film. Yeah, so I watched that, and again, very powerful. I'm currently reading, actually listening through Audible, um, the Bruce Perry, Oprah Winfrey book on ACEs that I think it's What Happened to You.
right.
Very powerful. And I was listening to it sitting in my meditation spot, looking out over the water on Hilton Head Island. And oh my gosh, anybody walking by, again, tears just streaming down my face, because as a trauma survivor, when you hear these things and you're validated, science is finally catching up to this, that you aren't creating these things in your head. It's not imaginary. It's the responses, like the body responses. I just remember back in the 80s, after the second bank robbery, and I had a severe panic attack and ended up in the hospital. And I remember at the time, now it was the 80s, the late 80s, trauma wasn't even on the scene. Like, they didn't even think about it. They just said, you're having something called a panic attack. You've manifested it. It's all in your head. You live with it. And that's what I was told. And so I just remember feeling so lost, because, well, what do you mean I've made this, like, I made this happen? What? Yeah.
Right.
So I'm just so glad that science is, and like, Dr. Mate and so many people are doing the work to finally help us trauma survivors understand the body, mind, brain impact of trauma.
Yeah, and I was about to mention along the lines of, what our bodies store and what they do. So my body was, really revolting, saying, listen to me. In my 20s, I had bleeding episodes and fibromyalgia. And then in my 30s, I ended up with chronic fatigue. I had endometriosis and then fibromyalgia, then chronic fatigue, all these chronic things that, I looked great on the outside. But inside was, I'm bleeding, I'm sick, I can't eat anything, those kind of things that my body was saying, you're not taking care of what you're not dealing with what I'm trying to tell you. But outside, I was in my first marriage, married to someone who said, just get over it.
Yeah.
Or my siblings were like, there's something wrong with you. And they just didn't know what to do with me. And, and I think about it back then, I was difficult to be around and, extremely reactive because I was in a constant state of fear of rejection and the fear of loss of connection, which is the number one thing that trauma survivors struggle with. It's the kind of push me, pull me.
Yes.
I want you, but don't hurt me. I got to put a wall up. I got to protect myself. And what happened for me was when I finally started getting on stage and being in the presence of other people in a way that I was really feeling the joy, feeling the expression, feeling accepted for that, and also engaging with others in a socially healthy way. So, Dr. Stephen Porges has the social engagement system. The way he describes it is when we are able to look at each other, voice something with each other, hear something with each other. Our social engagement system, which is part of our vagal nervous system, we actually begin to feel safer in the presence of others. It's a containment of sorts. So when I made the film, it wasn't about here are the steps to heal from trauma. It's more about here's a way to find a way to be safely connected with others in a way that helps you also learn about a role. And, acting is almost a way to learn about what it means to be human. And then there's the whole movement piece. So moving in sync with others, and the idea of relational reciprocity is something that happens when you're on stage with others. And, the people in my film are not professional actors, and I'm not either, but we've all found this thing that makes us want to feel alive, or it makes us feel alive and makes us want to continue living. We want to continue acting because it is such a life-giving, vital thing for us.
Yeah. I talked to you so much about the impact of the film on me and the different people that you focused on. As you talked about the movement part of it, that scene came into my mind of the female veteran soldier who had lost her daughter. And that scene where, it was so powerful on the stage, and she had the person with her, like in the moving, and it was almost like a dance. And oh my gosh, again, it just, tears were falling because it was so powerful. And it wasn't even so much what she was saying, although what she was saying was very powerful, but it was just the way they moved like again, like a dance, like a ballet together. It was just beautiful.
Actually the dance is 2.5 minutes long, and I've wanted to someday show that in its entirety because then it tells the whole story. And, for me, movement is the key thing for healing, and being able to express what's inside of me through movement and then bringing my voice along is just, it's everything for me. And some people that's not, what they want to do. Some people, they find writing more, expressive. But whatever it is that can bring your body and mind together in a way that you're drawing out those sensations. People talk about making sense of what happened to you. Well, you have to, in my opinion, bring the senses along, bring the body along.
Right.
Find, what's coming up for you. And so I love the movement in the world about around the somatic therapy and any body-based therapies that are happening more. You read more and more about, like tapping, for example. And
that
so,
EFT, right?
That's keep right and crossing the
I
body.
use that. Yeah, absolutely. I always feel like a monkey when I'm doing under the arm. Yeah.
It's and the film is not about all of us all of a sudden healing. It's about the process that we now are able to turn toward each other in a healing way in relationships. So not pushing people away, but actually coming back together and engaging with our key relationships that can help us heal. And so I mentioned my husband, and he's the one that purchased the Sue Johnson book, Hold Me Tight, which I didn't know anything about. And together, we've tried to continually, as the Gottmans talk about, turn toward each other, because he, I am able, my emotional vocabulary was much greater than his. So I could help him identify what was coming up for him that he didn't recognize either. And so that is the beauty of some of the stories in my documentary, is that these people are now turning toward people in their lives instead of putting up a barrier with rage or turning away in isolation.
Yes. Well, I told you twice since in our conversations that we've had, that one of the characters, John, or not character, I always keep wanting to say that, I think because it was a movie, but so John, one of the people that you focus on in this movie and follow or feature, oh my gosh, again, I was just so related to him. And it's exactly for that reason, is just watching him transition and reach this beautiful place. And I'm not going to talk about the scene because I don't want to spoil it for people, because they all need to watch the film. Everyone listening, you need to watch the film. I'm telling you. But it was just that aha moment near the end. And I was snub crying because it just clicked with me in such a profound way. And what you and I had talked about was, you asked me, why do you think it was him? What was it about his story? And I said, and I think I had an aha moment right just prior to us recording of my biggest fear that I discovered in EMDR therapy was fear of abandonment. And it certainly had some triggers dating back to my, coming from my childhood, my relationship with my mother at the time. And so when you finally reach that place where that fear no longer has that grip on you, that death grip, and you're able to do the healing work and release it. And the other thing you mentioned was, being with your senses, learning to be comfortable with those scary feelings and those difficult feelings, and being okay with it. Because as little kids, as little infants, as little children, we don't know what to do with that scary stuff and those hard feelings. But when we learn to do it as adults, oh my gosh, yeah.
Right. Well, I really believe what's happening right now with what you just talked about with little kids being comfortable with their feelings. There's so much going on that's positive, mindful schools and social emotional learning. And of course, all the work that's been done around ACEs and the PACEs, the Positive ACEs network, and that connection that, I feel that's the hope that we have for the coming generations, is that we don't all have to live in a state of fear, that our nervous system is constantly on 24-hour surveillance of the next thing that's going to harm us. Because the world is pretty scary, and that's my hope, and that people listen to what's happening in their body, and that they can work with young people to help them listen and identify what's coming up for them, and name it.
Yeah.
We who even knew how to do that when we were growing up?
Right. Well, that's what, and I love that you said that. I mean, what a beautiful, hopeful, positive spin on it, because, giving children voice. I never had a voice. I wasn't allowed to have a voice. Otherwise, I'd be like, whoa, don't hit me, Dad. And so, I love the idea of giving kids. I've certainly did it with my three. Because I think it's so empowering for children who then grow up to young adults and then adults, feeling like their voice matters and they can talk about those feelings and what's happening in them.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. When you said that about your dad, I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm hearing this. It's the same for me, but it was my mother.
Yeah.
And, um, you know, I, I just feel like I never had kids. That was the reason I didn't have kids, is because of my fear of not being able to manage what I didn't even know was part of my being at the time. I just knew my rage was out of control or my depression was out of control. And there was no, like Dr. Dan Siegel, he talks about the window of tolerance, where we have this place where we're, okay, where we flow through life, and our nervous system is fairly calm. We're not overreactive, but we're heightened, of interest, or, our things are positive in a way that we're curious about the world. But if we become hyper aroused, we're pushed out of that, and fear takes over. Or if fear takes over and depression is our natural state, we go into that hypo arousal. Excuse me. But those are things I never even imagined. I didn't know, even 12 years ago, I didn't know about these things. So for me, the making of the documentary was really a healing journey for me. But I'll
Oh,
just
yeah.
never.
I can only imagine. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Would you follow five people?
4 people, and
Okay.
interviewed many more, but it was a process of finding out. The genesis of the film was, the one day I realized that talk therapy was just not working. I was telling the same stories, which is what we do with trauma. We've created a narrative about what we think has happened and what we think is going on. And I'd go to therapy and I'd tell the story over and over again, and it was just not helping. And I just thought to myself, I have to do something different. And I was in bed one night listening to Krista Tippett interview Bessel van der Kolk. And he talked about, this is my first time I heard of him, children who have trauma histories and how they grow up having a multitude of chronic health issues and poor health. And I literally bolted up in bed and went, that's me, and I said, I want to meet him. And so I went to Kripalu, which is a yoga retreat center in the Berkshires, and spent a couple of days studying movement and trauma with him and learning about the body and the brain. And I said, and I read his book before I went there.
Yeah.
His book has a whole chapter on theater as a way to help people heal trauma, among many other modalities. But Shakespeare is one of the things he really promotes. And of course, that's in my documentary too, because there's a lot of physiological things that happen that tie to your brain and your body when you're doing Shakespeare. But when I met him, I said, I have this idea to do this documentary. And he said, great, I'd be happy to be interviewed. Well, that was the beginning. And he was kind enough to help me walk through the learning process, as was Gabor Mate and Dr. Stephen Porges. They all helped me understand neurophysiologically what's going on in our system, in our entire system, when we have a trauma history or experience trauma in our history.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, and thanks for introducing me to Dr. Stephen Porges, because he is going to join me on the show. So yay.
Oh my
I think
gosh.
in August. Yeah. So
Oh, I can't wait. I'm just for you anyway, because I just love the polyvagal theory and what's happening with that movement, in which I won't go into because I'm sure he'll talk about it. But, he has people in the Polyvagal Institute like Deb Dana, who's got quite a few different things going on, but she talks about befriending your nervous system. And they both together talk about, regulation, safety, trust, and connection, and how these can play out in interpersonal relationships. And I mean, isn't that what it's all about? Trying to have relationships that make you feel like you want to live.
yeah.
That's how I feel.
Yes. Beautiful. Oh my gosh. Well, I could sit here and talk to you for, I told you this was going to take on such a beautiful life of its own. And oh my gosh, it's just been wonderful. So is there anything else that you wanted to touch upon that we haven't had an opportunity to talk about yet?
I do have this acronym that I like to use when I talk about trauma and how to heal, and it's CREATE. And it's so the word C, or the letter C, touches on connection versus isolation. I have to always look at my notes on this one.
Yeah.
Regulation. So regulation so that relationships can be healthy. So co-regulation and reciprocity, and then engagement. So I do talk a lot about the social engagement system when I talk with other people about what actually is happening in our bodies. And I know Dr. Porges talks about that quite a bit, so he might touch on that. And then awareness. So awareness of our triggers, and that's the turning point. And that's been my turning point, is what's happening in our body, what do we need to be aware of, and then accessing support and like going back to therapy. So it's important for me to mention that I really believe in processing what's happening, not just giving up on talk therapy. It's super important to continue with a trusted therapist. And then transformation, which is, what are we transforming? Where are we going from here? What is it that you want to be different in your life? And then embracing life, the final E, is I want to live.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that acronym, and it's so perfect because it is that beautiful flow along the healing journey. And yeah, one thing you mentioned was therapy, and I just wanted to add a big star next to that, because I found my way onto the healing path in 2013 after 25 years of panic attack. I had done talk therapy and all kinds of stuff prior, and then gave up on it. But then when I found my way back onto it, and I just want to express to people that I know I talk about EMDR therapy a lot, but some people consider that, I don't know the right words, but like almost like an invasive, because I went back into all the traumas. I had to go back into the darkness. But there's so many other ones, like you talked about, somatic healing. And there's just an array of options available. Tapping, if you find a wonderful EFT practitioner, you don't have to go back into the traumas. You don't have to relive them, revisit them. You can just be here in the now and what's occurring, what's coming up, what's happening in your body, and then tap on it and release it that way. So, yeah.
Yeah. And there was one other thing, and I do have to pay tribute to someone who, honestly, I wouldn't be here talking to you if it wasn't for him. His name is Dr. Ed Walker. He was he's retired from the University of Washington Medical System. He was the director there, and he was a therapist my therapist when I was in my early 20s, when I was having the bleeding, and he basically said, your body is a barometer. It's telling you something, and the bleeding is obviously telling you something. And he supported me in a way that helped. It was the foundation for me to be able to get, move forward in life. And I always go back. I even went back and I said, I made a film. I want you to see it. And he watched
No.
it. Yeah. Yeah. So,
Yeah. And it is, again, oh my gosh, it's so powerful and so, oh my gosh, what's the word? Like validating when you have someone that is willing to sit with you and figure out solutions and just honor where you are on your, because we're all on our own individual journeys, and to have somebody like that. So I'm really glad he was there for you.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Beautiful. All right. So how do people watch the film? How do they find you?
Well, the film is available in two places, through my website, which is capacityforgood.com, capacity and the number 4 and the word good. And you can either purchase an individual stream, or you can, if you're an institution or a library, purchase an institutional license. There's a link there. It's available through Alexander Street Films. And so there's the, individual or institution. And for me, anybody who wants to reach out, they can find me on Facebook at Visceral Documentary. They can find me at capacityforgood@gmail.com. And I'm going to be adding some new resources to my website too, that I, want people to just take a look at. And so I think those are the best ways. I would love to hear people's thoughts on the film. I will say I haven't been in a real active outreach phase this past week because I'm starting my next documentary.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. So anyway,
Very
but
cool.
this has been a blessing, Teri, and I am going to come and meet you someday in
Oh,
person.
yes. Please, please do. I so look forward to it. And yeah, and it's just been a gift for you to be here and to share your insights in this film. Again, I can't say it enough, just what a beautiful impact it had on me on a heart and soul level. And yeah, everyone, you need to watch the film. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, thanks, Amy. All right. Well, everyone, please, until next time, remember, be gentle with yourself. And thank you for joining us today. All right. Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Teri Wellbrock again. Just wanted to thank you for listening to the episode today and remind you to visit my website as well as the academy.teriwellbrock.com for the courses. But if you go to my website, teriwellbrock.com, you can sign up for my monthly Hope for Healing newsletter, which is also jam-packed with information and strategies and blog pieces and guest blog pieces and links to shows. And just a great space for, again, healing and hope strategies. Thanks for, again, being here and being a part of this healing space. I very much appreciate you. All right. Bye-bye.